Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fuse Film Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Coll, and we're still in a galaxy far, far away, or should I say, Paradia. Ooh, that's right. We are on a journey, and there's no better person to go on this journey with than my man Vacta from the Vactorverse. Justin, you're here again. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me, sir. I love talking a galaxy far, far away with you.
Absolutely, yes. So it's been a few weeks since we chatted Ahsoka. Last time you were on, we were recapping episode 3, which left off with Ahsoka falling off the cliff to her death. Baylan, Skull, and Shin, and Morgan Elsbeth and Sabine going to the galaxy adjacent to the galaxy far, far away. Just a big proverbial cliffhanger, as we should call it. And then we saw Anakin. We saw him.
Ooh.
And a lot's happened since then. So there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot to talk about on this episode today, friends. We're going to recap that episode 4. We're going to recap episode 5. And we're going to recap episode 6. Reactions, thoughts, Easter eggs, whatever we want to talk about. We're just going to go for it. So let's dive into it, man.
Yeah.
I gotta say, this may be. I know when you go back and listen, folks, to our previous reaction episodes, you know, I've generally, I feel like I've been pretty neutral for most of this. It's kind of been a wait and see, and but I've also been cautiously optimistic, I think, about this show. And I've got to say, in this 3-episode arc that we're in, episodes 4, 5, and 6, not only is it a mix of some of the best Star Wars character storytelling that we've seen, but it's some of the best world building that I think we've gotten in Star Wars in a very, very long time.
Yes.
And you know, I don't know if we could have done this episode justice here, this reaction episode justice, breaking this out into 3 parts. So I'm kind of glad we're reacting to these 3 episodes all at once, because episode 4 for me was what I was waiting for as it related to the title character getting the transformation, the transformative concept that she needed. There was a lot of talk going into into the first few episodes about Rosario Dawson's choice to play the character, how she was playing the character, the stoicism, the dryness, the lack of optimism. And I kept saying, I think there's a decision there that's going to make sense at some point. And it now finally makes sense. She has been broken by what happened to her master and feels responsible for Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader. But not just that, the war-torn nature of all of the battles that she's been part of and the loss of life and all of these things. And then that translates into how she was mentoring and training Sabine in that sort of time that we didn't get to see, but kind of caught into in the first couple episodes. So to see all of that play out in this World Between Worlds last training with Anakin was just fantastic. I think that in itself, some of the best character-driven stuff I've seen in Star Wars outside of like what Andor does, which is a very different type of character study stuff.
Right.
This was really, really great. And then, of course, it was riddled with exciting fan stuff. I mean, Anakin charging with the red lightsaber, and it sort of flickers in and out of him, Anakin, and then Darth Vader, and the voices, and I mean, just such cool stuff. So that's one of my initial reactions. I'll say the last thing, and then we'll get to you, Vector. Going into this now, well, the latest episode, episode 6, I gotta say, um, very, very excited to see Thrawn. Um,
Yes.
I was very excited to see the Star Destroyer. What was it called? The Caligula or something
Chimera.
like that? The Chimera. I hate the Caligula. Yeah, that's some inappropriate Roman theater there. Uh, but yeah, the Chimera, and just it had the chunks hit out of it from the space whales. Um, I was probably more excited to see again just continued um, use of Greek mythology, Norse
Hmm.
mythology, and other mythologies from our world used in the creation of these motifs. Japanese culture. I think I saw somewhere online that when you see the stormtroopers that are chanting Thrawn, um, you see Enoch with the gold face, and some of these other ones that have broken um, uniforms and they're like melded with gold. That there's actually a process of that in Japan where you take broken pottery and you know put it back together using gold. I don't remember the name of it. I think I have it on my phone here.
It's kitsuge. Kitsugi.
Kitsuge,
Yeah.
yeah. And so just really cool stuff that continues to interject itself into um, Star Wars. I think Filoni's done something that we didn't see with Lucas too much, which Lucas heavily pulled out of like the Kurosawa stuff, Japanese Eastern mythology. But what I like about what Filoni's kind of brought into is more of like medieval knights. You see that with Balin's Skull, specifically. Um, I saw somebody write a tweet about how in episode 6 there was just so many Lord of the Rings esque things that they
Oh yeah.
saw. The statues there on the planet. Um, kind of reminded everybody of what was the thing in the two towers. I can't remember, but anyway, and of course you have Ahsoka the White now. So very very much all that. So just so many things that have happened in these 3 episodes. It's so awesome. Um, this is some of the best Star Wars, and probably um, you know helps us fans who may have been disappointed by the sequel trilogy.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's a lot. That's my initial reaction. So Justin, what are your initial reactions? I know it's a lot to unpack in 3 episodes, but what do you got?
Yeah, what I love about these 3 episodes is, and I think I might have mentioned it on our previous episode, this series I think is gonna be a good one to binge when people are watching it not week to week, when they have everything, when they just press play on the next
Mm-hmm.
episode, it's gonna play a lot better, and these 3 episodes are gonna play real nice back to back to back. A lot of stuff happens, like you said, in these 3, and I felt like the people who dropped off in the first 2, I was actually talking to a couple of people at work, and they're like, "Oh, man, it's too slow," and when when I was talking to one guy, and he was like, "When she got out on the wing and she was jumping around with the lightsaber, I had to turn it off." I was like, "No, no, no, no." He was talking about the physics of the ship blast. He was like, "If those guns had hit her, the lightsaber would have flew out of her hand." So he was wrapped up in the
Somebody really
physics of it.
trying to. There's no physics when it comes to the Force. What are you talking
Well, I told him, I said, "Well, what about the physics of her jumping and then landing on the other side," as we talked about in our episode with Rob. But yeah, it's I think those people are gonna be kicking themselves because these 3 have shown us exactly what we wanted to, and it's also kind of let the story play out, let everything before you make a judgment on it or before you say, "Hey, this is not for me." These 3 episodes, I think, is what people have been waiting for, and especially with this 6th episode that we just saw, where we actually see Ezra and we actually see Thrawn in person. We we can actually confirm they exist, they're still alive, and all those stuff you were talking about with the mythology and all the different aspects that Filoni has pulled into it have been amazing. But what's really got me going is every storyline is interesting to me. There's not a single one that I'm like, oh no, skip that one. The Sabine storyline of her growth and her character development is interesting to me. What Ezra and Thrawn have been up to while they've been away, and then how are they going to get back for the Filoni movie? Like, that is interesting to me. Ahsoka's journey is interesting to me with Anakin, her past PTSD, and then trying to train Sabine is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Balin and Shinhati, like where did they come from and where are they going? We still don't know exactly what Balin wants. Like, he's still talking about, I want power. But we got a little bit more.
A new beginning. He kind of
Yeah.
references that in the last episode. Yeah.
So I'm still wondering, and both of them, like, I'm wondering the whole Balin backstory and what he wants, and the Shin backstory, how they connect to each other, why they became master and apprentice. And so all of this stuff is interesting to me. The Night Sisters, the Night Mothers, that magic that they were doing, and how did they connect to Thrawn? And why is Morgan Elsbeth serving Thrawn? Um, I wonder what is in it for them to help him out. But it seemed like the Night Mothers were like seeing something in the destiny of, like, okay, this is supposed to happen. We're supposed to help him out. So I'm curious, like, all of those things have got me like wondering what's going on. And I can't remember if we talked about it in the last episode, but somebody brought up that all of the stuff that we've seen in the trailers so far has been shown in, I think,
Yep.
the first 4 episodes. So where,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's almost like a blank slate. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, and that's exciting for all of us fans. It's like anything could happen at this point. So I'm really excited for these last 2 episodes.
Agreed. Yeah, and I made a comment at the beginning of here, at the top of the episode, where I said, this is some of the best world building, and Filoni started that with the Clone Wars. Bringing in, you know, new concepts around the Mandalorians, new concepts around the Night Sisters of Dathomir and how that fits into that they're force wielders, but they're witches. They're like typical witches. They're about manipulating Earth and or earthly things or nature. They're not necessarily interested in full power like the Sith
Mhm.
or being peacekeepers like the Jedi. Um, and they just continues to build on this mythology. Okay, now we know that the Night Sisters actually came here from Paradia, and they rode the whales over. What I thought was really cool about the whales, the Purgle, is that I always assumed these migration paths where they were going there to breed, but now we know they go to
Right.
Paradia to die.
Yes.
That it's a graveyard, and I thought that was really really compelling. Um, when you see the Night Mothers or whatever there in with Thrawn, I immediately started thinking of the Disney Hercules movie and the sort of the fates, and they had that little thread
Yes,
where
yes.
they're like viewing it, straight out of Greek mythology, and you know
Mhm.
clearly they have some ability to see time and threads within the force, which I think is
Right.
going to be interesting to see why Sabine is this key person that Thrawn references. And
Right.
then there's Thrawn, right? He's this brilliant strategist, and we know from his interactions in Rebels that he's not just looking at military strategy. He's not just looking at what people bring tactically from a battle perspective or piloting. He looks at people's art. He looks at their cultures. He looks at all of these different things to really understand who his enemy is. It's very
Mhm.
fascinating. So
Yes.
um, I heard reference. I mean, people are so intuitive. I got to compliment the audiences out there that are watching this stuff that pick up on these things a lot better than I do. Because when I'm watching it, I'm just so immersed. I'm kind of just like, wow, this is cool. That I sort of forget that there's all these symbolism and themes and stuff. But somebody picked this up. I thought it was such a cool reference. Ezra is there. Thrawn is there on this ship. That is very much a very Peter Pan esque type concept,
Mm.
where
Yes.
Captain Hook and his ship and his crew is there, and you have this elusive boy that is always kind of you know part of that story, and it's very much a Peter Pan type thing. And if you think about it, we are in a galaxy far away, much like Neverland is. So there's a lot of these things that are enriching Star Wars and these characters and stuff. I will say this though, Sabine and Ezra, very very great. Meeting each other again after all this time. She didn't think to tell him that like the empire crumbled, like Luke Skywalker is like this, like she didn't like think to just rattle off in like 2 minutes, like here's everything you missed. Like I just felt like he would want to know, and it was so I do think that that's interesting that sort of got kind of laughably thrown away. Did we win? Yeah. Did it work? I think that's what he said. Did it work? Yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
It's like
I thought that was interesting, and then also that she doesn't have a way back. Like he's like, "Yeah, can't wait to get home, man. Can't wait to take a shower. Can't
yeah,
wait to get see all my friends again." And then she's like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And
about
of course
that."
she has no idea that Ahsoka is on her
Right,
way. And of course
right,
she's riding whales that are going to die. So it's kind of like, how are they going to get back? What's the plan? So it's going to be really interesting to see how the next two episodes play out. And I got
right.
to imagine there's going to be a lot, but it's going to end in a cliffhanger that's going to lead into this Filoni movie. That's
That's what
going
I'm
to,
thinking.
everybody I think that I've been reading has been saying that the the movie will likely be the thing that brings in Luke Skywalker and brings in some of these
Ooh.
OG characters and stuff. Mando and all these things, and there's going to be this climactic battle
Hmm.
between the Imperial remnants and the New Republic forces, and all paving the way right towards the First Order and
Right.
Resistance and all these kind of
Mhm.
things. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays itself out. You know, um, but yeah, it's some great storytelling. Some of the best Star Wars we've seen at a cosmic level. It's more interesting to me than what we saw in the sequel trilogy. I never thought I'd say that because there is things I like about the sequel trilogy, but this is the Star Wars we wanted.
Oh
I
yeah.
think when they said, "Hey, we're bringing Star Wars back," so let's do this because I don't want to overlook this. Hayden Christensen,
Yes.
anytime he shows back up as Anakin Skywalker, it's this jaw dropping, breathless thing for me because there's something about the prequels that I hold more dear maybe than the original trilogy because of my
Mm.
age. Because of my
Yes.
age, right? I'm 38 years
Yes.
old, so I never saw the original trilogy in theaters outside of the special edition
Right.
re-releases that they did,
Right.
and obviously those are my entrance into Star Wars was the original stuff, watching with my dad, etc. But I was a kid. It was 1998. I was in seventh grade, and I was as a kid. Star Wars was my thing, and Phantom Menace came out, and it was this big thing. I mean, I still have the Time magazine that like covered the whole idea that Star Wars was coming back. I wrote a research paper in my class that year about a 5 paragraph essay about how George Lucas changed the film industry forever with Star Wars. So like in some ways, Anakin Skywalker is more of my hero and Obi-Wan is more of my hero than even Luke Skywalker is because of
Mm.
just that's the Star Wars my generation grew up with.
Right.
So to see him, we saw him in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but just see him in that moment with Ahsoka Tano in the World Between Worlds, to see him in Clone Wars gear, that we did, that was in that in between Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars movie. Um, there's just so many great things, and his acting, I gotta say, is so much better now than it was in the prequel movies, which tells me that had nothing to do with anything other than George Lucas being a really bad actor director. Um, And if you give this guy really good stuff and really good direction, he's actually a really good actor. And it's kind of like, why are we not seeing Hayden Christensen like have a little bit of a career resurgence in terms of like doing other things? But maybe
Right.
he doesn't have to. He's got all this Star Wars royalty money that he can just kind of live off of. Um, but yeah, I just got to call that out because the way he's been playing this character, you saw it in Obi-Wan where, he was behind the mask and the helmet's cracked open and he's like, you didn't kill Anakin, I did. Those type, like, just so much more pain and loss and empathy that you feel for Darth Vader and the Anakin Skywalker character than you ever would have had the way that we saw him in those prequel movies. And
Right.
man, did he age well too, because God
Oh yeah.
bless America, he still looks the same, but he's,
Right.
10, 15, 20 years older, which is freaking nuts. So,
Yeah.
so I just had to mention Hayden Christensen back as Anakin Skywalker is so cool.
I think that scene with them in the world between worlds, um, that is the one I'm going to be going back to and watching. I've already watched it like 5 times, and there's because there's so many things you can pick up on and that are not just laid out for you. Like, okay, this is exactly what this is. There's so many different interpretations you can take, and his lesson for her, and what I've been watching fan theories and stuff online about how even the way that he's fighting his lightsaber style, if that's not so this is another thing that's kind of interesting. There's a side of the fandom that's like, okay, this was a dream, this was a forced dream, and it's all just in Ahsoka's mind that this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other side that, okay, he is a forced ghost, and this is what Anakin has become in the afterlife. And I find that interesting. Not the dream aspect. If this is a forced ghost of him, and this is what he became, there's a lot that you can read into the way he's fighting. The fighting style that he's using is almost effortless, and he's become this Jedi master like that he always should have been. Like, they didn't grant him the rank of master, like they were holding him back. This is like Anakin free, no fear of the dark side. Like you said, him flashing and going between those two. It, like I say, if it is a forced ghost, that to me is signifying.
Which camp do you fall into? You think it's a Force
I
ghost, or
keep
you think?
going I keep going back and forth. It's funny, like, I want it to be a Force ghost. That's what, when I first saw him, I was like, "Yes, that's him. That's Anakin." But then as I was going through it, I was and really it was the ending that is kind of like you see Ahsoka, this water rising up. It's that baptism,
Mhm.
imagery, and her being reborn, Ahsoka the White. That leads me to believe it was all a forced dream and it was all in her mind and she was fighting herself, and then her letting go of her guilt for Anakin, for the Clone Wars, even for the fall of the Jedi, because she felt like she could have stopped Anakin from falling, and her kind of letting go of all that
Mhm.
is, to me, okay, that was just a dream. But I think there also could be a middle ground. It could be both of those things. And
That's
even though
where I fall. I think it's both. I do. I think um, I think the concept of the chosen one and
yes.
bringing balance to the Force creates a scenario where Anakin is now tethered to the living Force in a
Mhm.
way that no one else is. And so, because of that, he is able to exist in a place like the world between worlds
Yes, that makes
and
sense.
interact with whomever,
Right.
in this case, Ahsoka, or leverage the living force to pull her while she's floating in water, clinging to life, to
Right.
pull that living force out of her into the world between worlds and say, "Hey, you've got to hold on. You've got to fight, but only you can choose to do so. So either you fight or you die. And here's your last lesson. And here's what I'm going to show you." So I always fell in. I don't know what this camp is. I didn't realize there was camps, but I always interpreted it as um, that it's a little bit of both.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
he is that is Anakin's that to me that is Anakin Skywalker. That's
Hmm.
not some fantasy of him that she was creating in her mind as a form of survival. I think there's so much about the Force we don't know,
Right.
but I do remember Qui-Gon Jinn talking a lot about the living Force and the
Yes.
idea that you think about Obi-Wan. It's what he says. It's what binds us, what surrounds us, penetrates us. It's everywhere. It's this living thing. And
Hmm.
so, if you believe that, I think it's very realistic to think that as the chosen one, the one who brought balance, he is able to do those things where he can
Yes.
slide between light and dark and and do all these things. So anyway, that's my take.
Yeah. There's actually a really interesting short story that I haven't got a chance to read it yet, but I own it. There's a book. Dang, now I'm blanking on the name of it. Anyways, there's an interesting. It's an anthology book. One of the short stories in the anthology is Obi-Wan and Anakin talking in the afterlife, and
Mm,
because we never saw Anakin get trained on how to become a Force ghost. We saw Qui-Gon, we saw Obi-Wan, and he was training Obi-Wan and Yoda how to do it. But at the end of Return of the Jedi, Anakin just shows up and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm here." So that story is about him talking to Obi-Wan and kind of like, "Yeah, I don't know how I got here." And so it was kind of like the will of the Force or
mhm.
even the will of Anakin as the chosen one, and he was so strong in the Force because basically the midi-chlorians created him is what we're led to believe, and he just manifested himself into the afterlife, into a Force ghost, which I can believe that, and I like that storyline. But anyways, they kind of that's where they amend their friendship and kind of explain, get over the beef that they had at the end of their lives. So I like that. I enjoy that narrative, and I've just been hearing a lot about that story. So I'm like, man, I should have read this because this anthology came out like last year, and earlier this year, and I bought it, and I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. So I'm really interested in that that type of storyline and philosophies.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it feels very you know, if you equate it to like Christianity, right? Like Jesus dies on the cross and resurrects after 3 days, right? The idea of resurrection, and there's the whole concept of the Trinity that
Hmm.
God and Jesus are the same person. Actually, he's actually one person, one God, but in three parts, that kind of thing. It is interesting if you equate things like that into Anakin Skywalker being the chosen one. There's a lot about the chosen one in that prophecy that we don't really know about, but like the idea that he is maybe has the ability to do things within the Force that others don't. For example, he didn't have to receive that training because it just is something naturally that could happen. What I do find fascinating is though, if you do believe he is the chosen one, like I do, he's still living that out. The chosen one is influencing events right now
Right.
because he's keeping Ahsoka from dying. And Ahsoka
Hmm.
is very pertinent to this particular cosmic event that's going on because she's going to be the one that is going to show up in Paradia and make a difference, right? And it's going to be
Yes.
really interesting to and you kind of heard that in episode 6, right? The witch mothers were basically like, there's one that's on her way, and Thrawn was like, what? And what's interesting is Thrawn and Ahsoka have sort of crisscrossed a little bit. They've never really interacted before.
Right.
So that's going to be really fascinating. Um, you hit on the
This is
question earlier.
This is the book, sorry, real quick. From a certain point of view,
Yeah,
Return of the Jedi. So if anyone's interested, this is
we're not getting
I've
paid to
just
advertise this, but yeah, I'm gonna check this out for sure.
yeah, Mike Chin is the author.
I've seen this referenced on Screen Crush, and some of
Yes.
their videos and some other things like that. So
Yeah.
um, when you're done with it, you just send it over to me. I'll check
Yeah.
it out. So this is one of my favorite questions to ask anybody when they're watching stuff like that. What surprised you the most in these 3 episodes? Like, if you could take a step back and say, man, like I didn't know that they were going to go there, or this person continues to be interesting and continues to. What has surprised you the most in this sort of 3 episode arc?
I think it's a tie between Anakin, because I'd heard rumors and rumblings, oh, Hayden Christensen is coming, but I didn't know to what extent he was involved and
Mm-hmm.
how deep they were going to go. I actually wish they had done more. Like I could have done that whole episode 5. If that was all in the world between worlds, I would have been happy. Jason and Hera is fine, but I would have just preferred to stay in the world between worlds and get more Hayden, because, like you said, I think his acting is great. I think his emotional gravitas that he brings to that role is great. And I text you this. That entire episode, I had goosebumps. 90% of that episode, I had goosebumps, and I was just like, yes, more, more, more. Because
Who's the actress that played young Ahsoka? She played young Gamora.
oh, right,
She's recently in Barbie as well. I
right.
got to tell you, she was fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
And
she,
I thought, I don't know if they had a stunt double for her, but I thought her lightsaber fighting was better than Rosario Dawson's. Like, she was doing spin moves and like, I was like, this
you
is
said it,
great.
you said it, but I was thinking it because I had the same reaction. I'm like, man, she trained up for that. Like, she was
Oh
kicking
yeah.
ass. Like,
Yeah.
that was really well done. But I also have to say, like, the cinematography for all of that was so good, combined with Kevin
Mhm.
Kiner's score, where you had some very eeriness to it, but also some hope. You had some foreboding, some ominous stuff. Like, it was so good. Um, it brings a lot of tension and emotion from the audience, because you're just like, what does all of this mean?
Right.
This is something that just Ariana Greenblatt, yeah, that's her.
Yes.
She's fantastic. I got to tell you, like, number one, she clearly enjoys being painted various different colors. So I gotta commend her for her ability to endure that level of makeup and prosthetics, multiple times in a row. But she just has a um, I don't know what the right word is, but just an expression about herself to
Mm.
bring out these characters. Like when she played young Gamora, it was, there's that scene with her and Thanos in the Soul World. Did you do it? Was it worth it? And it's like just so good, and to see her play young Ahsoka, which, by the way, some viewer posted online that they retconned Ahsoka's tube top from the
Oh,
original
yes, yes.
Clone
Mhm.
Wars.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool that we
Yeah.
got a little bit more of an appropriately dressed um,
Yeah.
Ahsoka, and stuff like that. But just everything from the headdress to the reactions. Um, our man Cody, or was that Rex? Commander Rex.
Rex. It was Rex. Yep.
So awesome. Get
Yes.
to see
That
Rex
was
in there.
that was amazing.
It actually, unfortunately, makes me want to see more live action Clone Wars stuff.
That's
Which
exactly what I was thinking.
maybe
I
we'll
could
see.
get a whole series
So,
of it.
yeah, like here's what we need to do, Disney and Filoni. We need another season of Clone Wars completely in live action. So
Mm.
let's make that happen. All right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think what surprised me, to answer my own question, what surprised me is um, just how compelling this all is. Again, I
Mm.
went into this with the premise and the promise of a savior, good and bad, in this galaxy far, far away, and this race to go get them and undo something that had happened. Whether it's put the Imperial Galactic Empire back together or continue to um, suppress the Imperial remnants and keep the New Republic and peace and order in the galaxy. Um, I'm just surprised, I think, at the level of detail of which they're going about answering that question and delivering on that premise. Um, they very well could have had an entrance from Ezra where he just shows up with a lightsaber and starts killing people, or doing some badass stuff. But to have it in a way where he's just kind of leaning up against a alien trailer park kind of deal, and just hanging out, and with one line, I knew I could count on you. Like, I just thought that was great. And by the way, did you notice his beard and everything? He looked just like his dad in the
Yes, yes,
paintings that he
yes.
saw of his
Right.
father. I thought that was well done by Filoni. Again, the attention to detail, I think, has surprised me the most in this whole series, with the world building, the mythology building, and just the plants of things. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see how kind of episodes
Yes.
7 and 8 pan out. I do want more Hera. I do. And it's not just because she has a phenomenal hiney. You know, uh, I've seen the memes, internet. So, but it has everything to do with the fact that I just want to see her fly the ghost and do some really awesome stuff. And I don't know if we're going to get that. I think we may have seen the last of her in this show. Um, so, but yeah, man, I feel like we could break down a lot of things. If you had to sum up these 3 episodes in one sentence, what would it be?
Oh man. The live action Clone Wars that we've all been waiting for. That's what I would
Yep,
say for these 3.
love it. Where do you think we're going? Where do you think the next 2 episodes? What do you? I mean, you mentioned a blank slate. Like, we got nothing from the trailers. No teases. What do you think we're going to get?
I'm thinking the next episode might be some type of flashback with how did Ezra get from where we saw him last in Rebels, where he's standing on the deck and takes Thrawn out with the Purgle. How did he get from there off that ship if he was just by himself? And then how did he get into the outer lands, or the outworld part? And then Thrawn's kind of, what's he been doing for the last how many years he's been out there? That's what I'm interested in.
Do we know
And
how many years it's been? I don't.
I've heard 5 and I've heard 10, but I haven't really sat down and kind of mapped it out. So in my mind, it's between 5 to 10, because you saw Ezra was a boy and now he's a man, and then Thrawn, he looked like he was in
Thrawn's
he was
put
in
on a
his
little weight.
yeah
Nobody's mentioned any of that. I haven't seen anybody
yeah
reference that online, but I'm thinking, like, what's Thrawn been eating while he's been out in that galaxy far away? He's got a
yeah
little belly, and maybe he's been eating stormtroopers or trailer park turtles or something. I don't know.
yeah.
So
But you could
yeah,
see his age too, kind of in his face. Obviously, it's just the actor, but if we're
yeah.
going in the world explanation, he looks older than he did the last time we saw him in Rebels. So there's clearly some time that has passed. I could believe 5. I could believe 10. Either one. They both seem plausible to me. So
Mhm.
I think it's let's just say 7. Let's go with that.
What's God, I feel like I should know this stuff. I'm hosting a podcast, for Christ's sake. The time gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, I think I heard that's supposed to be 40 years or 30 years,
Yeah,
something
it's
like
like
that.
30. That's what about
Yeah.
30 years.
Okay. So, um, and this is clearly post Return of the Jedi. We just don't know
Yes.
how far beyond. I say Return of the
I
Jedi, the Battle
I
of
think
Endor.
right. I want to say that this is um in line with Mando season 3, which is, I think that's 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So I think
Okay,
that's
so
about
we're
right. I haven't
still
researched it, but
so we're 25 years before the Force Awakens. Okay, I can buy that. Um, so if it's 5 years after Jedi, I'm trying to remember the OG trilogy from New Hope all the way to Jedi. How many years does that span?
yeah, that
Um,
was
I don't know. somebody in the audience is listening to this, just send us an email or a tweet or whatever and let us know, because I'm sure you guys know more than we do. But yeah, I think they're gonna. I'm curious where they're gonna go to. I honestly have no real theories at this point.
Hmm.
You know, I keep hearing people think Darth Maul's still going to show up. I don't know. I mean, I guess with the witch mothers that might happen, but we need to not do that. I really believe we need to stay with these characters that this story has brought into. I am most interested in Balin's plan. I think my theory he keeps using words like a new beginning and power and all this. So my assessment is that dude wants access to the world between worlds, and that guy wants to go and rewrite history, and maybe potentially rewrite the Jedi Order into his own image and own vision. I think that's what he's doing. It could also be something completely different. What if he is I heard reference that Balin Skull, even though his name is driven out of Norse mythology, for wolves, um, but his Ray Stevenson really wanted to approach him more like a medieval knight. Like, so the way he
Hmm.
walks, the way he uses his lightsaber, all of those things, very much like that sort of Black Knight character in medieval literature. And the thing about the Black Knight, the thing about the any medieval knight is they have a code, they have a creed, they have this mission that's very unique and specific to them. And he really is doing a great job of that. I had this theory that what if Balin is on a mission that was given to him years ago? I don't know by
Hmm.
who, maybe the Jedi Order. And all of this is just executing on something that started a long time ago. And he's not actually a bad guy. He's not actually a mercenary. He's not actually somebody that's out to destroy or pillage or hurt. I mean, because you've seen it. He doesn't want anybody to die. He didn't want Ahsoka to die. He certainly didn't want to kill Sabine. He gives everybody the benefit of the doubt. He makes deals. So in reality, he's not really a bad dude. He's sort of just right now getting what he needs and what he wants from these bad people. So what's in it for everybody is interesting. You have asked that question, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. What is Thawne's grand plan? What's the witch mother's grand plan? What is Morgan Elsbeth's grand? What are they getting out of the deal? All of these things. It's going to be really fascinating. One thing I will say, and I'm going to end on this. Now that we're in the galaxy far away, I want to see I want to see more of it. I want to see what else
Right.
is out there. I want to see what other aliens exist, what the Force users are like there. I want to see
Yes.
more of what's going on in the
Right.
galaxy far away, because you can't just tease us and we're going to stick to this little planet and not give us something more. So it'd be
Yeah.
interesting. Uh,
I want to see it.
yeah. Well, listen, everybody. This is Kevin Coll with Fuse Film in a galaxy far, far away. And like I say always, near and dear to your hearts. Justin, I want to give you the last word as we close out today. But thank you for listening. Thanks for hearing our reactions. We could have probably spent another 4 hours just diving into everything Ahsoka, everything Star Wars. I will say one last thing before I flip it over to you, Justin. I'm always late to the game on stuff. Disney Plus, you haven't seen it, has a phenomenal documentary called Light and Magic about the birth of industrial light magic. And it is a fascinating documentary about the visual effects of Star Wars and all these other movies like Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, and how essentially one movie, Star Wars, and a group of misfits, outsiders. These guys weren't like special effects people known in the industry. They were machinists. They were
Right.
um, camera people that were just doing fan films. They were industrial engineers and artists and stuff like that all came together to
Oh, yes.
form Industrial Light and Magic under George Lucas's direction. Um, it's a wonderful documentary about how this whole thing started. And there were so many things I thought I knew but there's so many things now that I know more of. Like I didn't realize John Dykstra, how much he was really truly involved from the beginning,
Mm.
and how he actually is instrumental in bringing a lot of these people like Rick Mirren and um, what's his name, Joe Johnston, and all these other people together. Sort of the OGs of ILM. But then after the first Star Wars movie, he's not invited to come back. Lucas kind of fires him basically without firing him, And he goes on
Man.
to do Battlestar Galactica and other things and has a career, but like he sort of deviates away from that. It's a fantastic documentary. So as we're talking about Star Wars, I had to bring this up because it's something I've sort of been watching in between Ahsoka. It's just a great series. So if you haven't seen it and you're really big into this stuff, it's a great watch because again, if we didn't get Star Wars in 1977, we don't get Industrial Light and Magic. We don't get Industrial Light and Magic. We don't have things like E.T., Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Terminator 2, all these movies. Like the world of cinema may look completely different today
Right.
than if it wasn't for Star Wars and if it wasn't for the people behind the scenes that made new things. And all they had to do was ask themselves, how do we do this? And not think not think that the impossible was impossible, but that it was
Yeah.
possible. And they set out to do something. So as you were living your life, people, go out and just remember there's a whole world of possibilities out there, and dream big, and just do something fun, do something different. That's my advice. Go do that. Factor,
Yeah.
what's the last word?
I love this show, and I love that we don't know what's coming next. I cannot wait, and I can't wait to discuss it with Kevin Coll.
Love it. Likewise, my friend. Thank you, everybody, from a galaxy far, far away. Keep the lightsabers lit and the blasters at the ready. I'm Kevin Coll. This has been the Fuse Film Podcast. Peace.